but when it did, Dad would peek through the blinds looking guilty. Mom just shook her head from the couch and muttered something under her breath. I was 17 and home alone when I heard it. I know you're in there. It's been 12 years, man. I opened the front door. The guy nearly fell backwards. Normal looking dude, middle-aged, holding a crumpled piece of paper. Oh, hi. Is your dad home? I'm his old college roommate. He held up the paper. Your old man bet me $20 Michael Jordan wouldn't win his 6th ring. That was 1998. I've been knocking on this door ever since. He handed me the IOU, both their signatures, right there at the bottom. I left it on the kitchen table. Mom saw it first and laughed so hard she had to hold the counter. Dad picked it up, read it, put it back down, and the first thing out of his mouth was, so now he knows someone's home. Then he turned off the kitchen light and got under the table. We were never in danger. My dad just lost a bet because of the greatest of all time. Every time we heard a knock on the front door, my dad...
That's not Michael Jordan. I think that's
My daughter came home crying with an F because her teacher doesn't know what color blood is. The first time I realized something was wrong, Riley...
That thing is... That son of a gun is stupid.
Came home from school holding out her arm. Look, Dad, you can...
What is this?
My veins right here. She traced the blue lines on her skin with her finger. I put down... Dadder. Actually, sweetheart, that's not...
It's something...
red because of hemoglobin. It's just... It's darker red in your veins. Her face... up, but Mrs. Miller showed us a whole PowerPoint about it. She even had diagrams from a science book. The next morning, I packed my work scrubs in my bag. I'm an ER nurse at Mercy General, and I was working the afternoon shift anyway. I sent Mrs. Miller an email asking if I could do a quick presentation about blood for career day that afternoon. She loved the idea. When I arrived, Mrs. Miller introduced me as Riley's dad, who works at the hospital. 28 kids stared up at me from their desks. I heard you guys learned that blood is blue inside your body, I said. The entire class nodded enthusiastically. Mrs. Miller beamed from her desk in the corner. I pulled out a blood collection tube from my pocket and held it up. This is what we use to draw blood at the hospital. Notice something. The tube creates a vacuum. No oxygen inside at all. I paused. When we draw blood with these, it never touches oxygen until we pop the cap off. I showed them photos on my phone of sealed blood tubes. See? Still red. Mrs. Miller's smile started fading. She shifted in her chair and cleared her throat. A boy raised his hand and pointed to their science textbook. But our textbook says it's blue. I picked up the book and checked the publication date. 1998. Medicine updates pretty fast. We used to think lots of things that turned out to be wrong. Mrs. Miller suddenly stood up from her desk, her hands gripping the edge. Well, thank you for that interesting presentation, Mr. Johnson, but we need to move on to math now. I nodded and started packing when a girl in the back raised her hand. So our textbook is wrong? The class erupted in whispers. Mrs. Miller's jaw clenched and her voice got tight. The curriculum says, actually, I interrupted, pulling up the state science standards on my phone. I walked over and turned my phone toward her. The current curriculum specifically mentions this myth as something to correct. She stared at the screen and her eyes narrowed. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. And her nostrils flared. Can I speak with you in the hallway? The kids watched as we walked out, and the door closed behind us. Do you have any idea how hard it is when parents undermine my authority? Her face was red, and her voice was sharp. Now they'll question everything I say. I kept my voice calm. Isn't that exactly what we want them to do? Question things and learn critical thinking? She crossed her arms tightly. I've been teaching for 22 years. I'm not changing my whole curriculum because some nurse thinks he knows better than our textbook.
Hey, class time.
I became my school's hero for 1 minute before everyone watched what happened next. I don't play around when it comes to Halloween. Dad measured me for the...
Let me... it's been only 3 videos, but I'm gonna make another video again. So, bye-bye. Have a nice day. Hello guys, welcome to the part 2 of his story. And we're looking at another girl called Her Story. We're gonna probably look at the vids. Not my parents. So let's just what? It's some of it.
A 6-year-old walked into my classroom leaning so far sideways under his backpack that his hand was dragging along the floor. I walked over to help him take it off.
Okay, maybe a little thing. This is not actually the same thing. So by the way, this is just another guy. Look, collaborations. Doesn't she have collaborations? Beacons AI. Beacons AI. What does Beacons say? Beacons AI. So, This is Beacons AI. Bruh. Wait a minute, let's watch her oldest video. Her oldest video is this.
When I saw my husband's newest friend over for dinner, I knew I had 60 seconds to leave the house. I came home from work and my husband was beaming in the kitchen. Hey babe, I want you to meet someone. My new friend from work. He's making us dinner tonight. A man stepped out from behind the counter. My blood turned to ice. I recognized that face immediately. I'd seen it in every one of my nightmares for 3 years. This is Chase. He's like a brother to me already. My husband gleamed. Chase smiled at me. A calm, friendly smile. Nice to meet you. My legs almost buckled. He found me. For context, I was kidnapped when I was 19. A college freshman, walking home alone from a late study session. I was wearing headphones when a van pulled up beside me. I didn't even have time to react before a hand clamped over my mouth and dragged me inside. I was duct taped and driven for hours. The man took me to a house in the middle of nowhere, kept me in a soundproof basement chained to a pipe. I was there for 4 months. He came down every night, sometimes twice, called me his project, said he was training me, made me thank him when he was done. He took photos, videos, made me say things into the camera, said if I ever escaped, he'd send the footage to everyone I loved. When I fought back, he burned me with cigarettes. The night I escaped, he forgot to lock the door. I ran barefoot through the woods for 6 hours until I collapsed at a gas station. Police never found him no matter how hard they looked. He simply vanished. But before I changed my name and moved across the country, a letter arrived at my hospital room. I'll find you. We'll pick up right where we left off. Now he was here, standing in my kitchen, stirring pasta. Like the last 3 years were intermission. My heart was slamming against my ribs.
I was sitting in class when I felt a tingling in my brain and immediately knew what it was. My entire life, my doctors had told me if I ever felt my epilepsy coming back, I'd have 2 minutes before I could burst out into a seizure and would probably never wake up. I knew my meds were in my locker, and when my hands started shaking too, I knew I needed them bad. I raised my hand and asked if I could use the bathroom, but my teacher didn't say anything. I had no choice, so I stood up, but she stopped me. Excuse me? Did I say you could leave? I told her it was an emergency, but she looked closer into my eyes. Wait a second. Why are your pupils so dilated? Are you on drugs? I pulled away from her. No, I'm not on drugs. I need my epilepsy meds. I tried to walk past her, but she grabbed me again. Nuh-uh, you're going to pop more pills. I knew it. She shoved in front of me and locked the door. I've had it with the druggies in our school. I felt it getting worse. Please, I'm not lying. I really do have epilepsy, but she was already at the light switch. You know what? Let's test it then. She instantly started flicking the lights, and I felt my brain tense up. I yelled, stop, and my classmates started getting mad too. One guy in the back stood up. Let her go. This is serious. Can't you see? Absolutely not. She called our principal, telling him she caught the drug dealer they've been looking for, telling him to search my locker. Since you want to keep lying, let's really test this. She typed something into the computer, and the screen exploded with rapid strobing lights in every color. Our whole class was yelling now, especially the one guy in the back, but as he stood up from his desk, something happened. His voice cut off mid-sentence. We all looked at him and saw his face. Then he just completely collapsed, kicking rapidly on the floor. Our teacher paused on the video, realizing he wasn't joking. All of the girls around him were screaming. Nobody knew what to do. Then someone burst through our door. Our principal heard all the noise, and when he saw him, he was terrified. He dropped down next to him, trying to remember what to do. But when I saw the cops, I saw they were holding evidence bags. They just went through my locker and took my epilepsy pills. I used all my strength to get up and yelled, "Those are my seizure pills! He needs them!" The principal saw them and realized I was telling the truth. He opened them, basically shoving them down the boy's throat, and we all watched him slow down and finally stop kicking. Then we turned to our teacher. Long story short, she's in the same prison as Diddy. I was sitting in class when I felt...
She's in the same prison as Diddy. Bruh.
Not even have a shelter. You think you are even worthy of
Shut
I
up.
was walking home when I noticed a man behind me. He smiled at me, not friendly, hungry. He started to pick up the pace. I started speed walking. I could hear his footsteps behind me. The streets were empty. I took a bunch of turns trying to lose him. When I finally did, I ran into my apartment building out of breath. I was standing in the elevator. The doors were about to close. Then his fingers jabbed through the gap. He walked in and stood right beside me. Started playing eerie music on his phone. I felt like I was in a horror movie. Bang. He slammed the emergency stop button. I stared at the ground. I could see the outline of something rectangular in his pocket. It looked like a knife. My phone slipped out of my hand and hit the floor between us. My only lifeline. Now closer to him than me. He bent down to pick it up. His hood fell back. His face was ghostly white. His hands were shaking worse than mine. This is it. I'm going to die. He dropped to one knee, pulled the object out of his pocket. A small box. He opened it. A ring. Will you marry me?
Oh, this is the end of the video. Pay.
My father abused me for years in secret, but then one day he proudly confessed to it in public. My father never loved me, and the only time he acknowledges my existence is when I make a mistake, and he leaves me with bruises and a limp to make sure I never do it again. So one day when he told me his friends were coming over, I was excited because I knew it was my chance to expose my dad and show everyone who he really was when no one was watching. As soon as they all sat around the table, I began to serve them. I clattered forks a little too loudly on purpose and walked a little too heavily, watching as he pretended not to be angry hungry, so he could seem like a good dad in front of his guests. And finally, it came. He slammed his fist on the table and shouted at the top of his lungs, "You're a worthless mistake! I'd be better off if you were never born!" I looked over at his guest, who froze and said, "I didn't know you spoke to your daughter like that." My father looked like he was about to faint. Turns out, the guest was his boss, and his outburst lost him a promotion. My father abused me.
When me and my children finally escaped my abusive husband, we thought our problems were finally over, but they weren't. For most of my children's lives, we were living in fear of my husband that I'd been forced to marry in an arranged marriage. I always thought escaping him was the answer. So when we finally ran out the door that day and made it to the homeless shelter, it was the best day of my life. But on the second day, we realized it was closed during the day. I'd have to put my kids in the dirty stroller the shelter gave me and walked around aimlessly. That's until winter came around and it started snowing one day. Luckily, there was a diner close by, but when I went in, I was told I had to buy something to stay. I really didn't want to spend my last $30, but if I stood outside, then my kids would get really sick. And so I bought the cheapest food item there. I tried to get my kids to eat as slow as possible so we could stay longer. Midway through the meal, a random woman came over saying she had spare clothes and asked if I wanted them. My face lit up and I said yes as fast as I could, but then she went out to her car to get them and drove off. My heart shattered and I felt broken by life again. But then 10 minutes later, she returned with a car full of clothes. When me and my children finally escaped my abusive husband, we thought our problems were finally over, but they weren't. For most